More now on our top story, new insight into the investigation of former President Trump's handling of classified White House documents. Joining us now, Laurence Tribe, a renowned constitutional law professor at Harvard Law School. Professor, thanks so much for joining us. What's your analysis of the new information we learned from this heavily redacted 38-page affidavit?
Well, it's redacted, but much less heavily than most such documents. In fact, in about 50 years of teaching and practicing law, I've never seen an affidavit as thoroughly exposed as this on any serious criminal matter. Normally, the Department of Justice would release nothing. That was Merrick Garland's initial preference. He didn't want to release anything. But thanks to you and the media, he was challenged and he was told, you really could release some of this stuff without compromising national security or sources or endangering anyone. And reluctantly, although I'm sure in hindsight, he's rather glad to have been forced to do it, reluctantly, Merrick Garland kind of had to lift the curtain a little bit. And what we saw today in the unredacted portions of the affidavit, and the redacted parts would only have made it look worse for Trump. What we saw in the unredacted portions was not just probable cause, but overwhelming evidence of 3 serious federal crimes, one of which was espionage. And in footnote 2 of the affidavit, on page 22, in footnote 2, the affidavit explains that all of this stuff about the president's declassifying the material is bogus. Not only was there no standing declassification order, but the espionage law doesn't make anything turn on whether something is called classified or not. What this does is point directly to Donald Trump in a way that will make it impossible for Merrick Garland not to seek an indictment. Because unlike the complicated issues involved in the attempted coup and in the insurrection, where Trump did his very best to keep his fingerprints off of the actual manipulation of the electoral slates and all the rest, here, not only his fingerprints, but his distinctive handwriting is on the top secret documents. He can't say that he didn't know they were there. He's been bragging that they belong to him. And the department has no choice now but to pursue the clear culprit, the person who was guilty, if you are to believe anything in this affidavit, guilty of obstruction of justice as well as violating the espionage law. Yeah, because he had the documents, he had them in a place where they were insecure.
So, and those are potential crimes, obviously, if convicted. So was this a win, do you believe, Professor, for the Attorney General Merrick Garland?
Well, it was a win for the country. Certainly a win for Merrick Garland in the sense that now you really have to be off your rocker to think that they didn't have a basis for going in with this search warrant after they had tried to get the material in every cooperative way and were lied to. It was clearly a loss for Donald Trump because he thought he could be really clever by having it both ways. He kept saying, we want this material to be released, but then he actually never authorized his lawyers to file a motion to release it. Now he got his wish, but as is so often the case, you have to be careful what you wish for, because what was released, despite his complaint that it doesn't use the word nuclear or that there's a lot of redacted material, what was released makes the most convincing case that I've ever seen in 7 years of teaching evidence law and over 40 years of teaching constitutional law, the most convincing case of serious crime at this stage in an investigation. So I think Merrick Garland certainly won, the country won. The one big loser, and he doesn't like to think of himself that way, is the former president.
We'll see what happens next. The constitutional law professor, Laurence Tribe. As usual, thanks very much for joining us, and we'll have much more right after this.